This is the black soldier fly. Because we're in waste management and we want them to like eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, they do 5 times their own body weight every day.
Olympia Yaga is a bug farmer.
How good is it?
On the industrial outskirts of Canberra, her insects eat their way through tons of food waste from supermarkets and are then sold as stock feed.
We need to reclaim those resources, that water, those nutrients, and put them back into our agricultural supply chain.
It's highly specialised work which has sent the company looking overseas for someone with insect farming expertise.
The commercialisation of insect farming is about 10 years old plus, maybe. And so you don't have a lot of people that are truly skilled at doing this.
Olympia found a highly qualified candidate, a South African who had worked for Fortune 500 companies but doesn't have a degree, which rules out common skilled visas. The firm is pursuing a so-called company-specific labour agreement, but that still wouldn't allow the staff member to bring his family over from South Africa.
How do I manage a staff member well when I can't give them any assurity that continuing down this process, we're almost a year in now, he will be able to bring his family here and start a life.
Insect farming might be niche, but speaks to a broader problem of getting and keeping a highly skilled worker in Australia. Our migration system now is overwhelmingly driven by what is ostensibly temporary skilled migration, which is in fact often neither temporary nor skilled. There are around 2 million people in Australia, that's 7% of the population, on temporary visas, compared with the annual permanent migration intake of around 200,000 people. That has implications for economic growth, the budget, the labour market and wages, and productivity.
Our migration system is broken. It's not delivering for Australians, it's not delivering for our businesses, and it's not delivering for migrants themselves.
A complex system of visas and a rigid skills list are just part of what is now widely recognised as a migration system that is unworkable, not just for would-be migrants, but for the country. Fixing a system which is now dominated by temporary visas must be at the heart of reform.
We've seen a shift away from permanent migration towards short-term, insecure, visa-based migration.
Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neil commissioned a review of the migration system last year, headed by former senior bureaucrat Martin Parkinson. The review's final report is not due until later this year, but in a speech to the National Press Club tomorrow, and in next month's budget, O'Neil is expected to set out major changes to our temporary migration system.
The single biggest problem facing our migration system today is that it's not giving our country the skills that we need. It is a horrendously complex system that makes it really hard to bring high-skilled workers into the country who will lift the productivity of everyone around them. But on the other hand, we have made it far too easy for companies to bring in workers who will work low-wage jobs and be very vulnerable to exploitation. So basically, we've got the whole thing back to front.
There's a lot of hurdles that employers have to jump through before they can sponsor people for permanent visas. There's a lot of uncertainty for skilled migrants that might apply off their own bat to come to Australia through the points test. And what those mean is that we're missing out on many highly skilled people.
If something goes wrong, if you're not being paid properly, if your job's unsafe, if you're being harassed, then you're concerned not just about losing your job, but being deported out of the country. That's a recipe for exploitation.
Submissions to the Parkinson Review by business groups also acknowledge the need to guard against migrant exploitation. In trying to address the low-wage job side of the problem, government, employers and unions seem united on the need to fix the so-called TSMIT, the Temporary Skilled Migration Income Threshold. It's the minimum income someone on a temporary skilled visa should earn, but it was frozen at $53,900 in 2013, which means it is now worth only 80% of what average Australians earn.
This is supposed to be a skilled program. Instead, it's increasingly attracting less skilled people to Australia, earning much below average wages.
Instead of seeing this system lift the productivity and lift the wages of Australians, we're seeing it have the opposite effect. So this is a really urgent problem that we need to fix for the country.
Then there is the question of how to make it easier for high-skilled workers to get into the country and stay here. Right now, the system is full of potential roadblocks and complexity. The skills list is so restrictive that more than 1,000 companies have had to resort to costly and time-consuming exemptions.
For employer-sponsored migration, skills lists are largely unnecessary. They have been introduced in the last 20 years. We had no specific skills list which said these skills are in and these skills are out. All skills above a minimum level were acceptable. Now, I think the government will probably go back to something similar to that.
There is broad agreement from business unions and the government that the skills list system doesn't work anymore.
It's archaic because it relies on a really detailed definition of occupations, and especially when we have something like the tech sector where the description of jobs changes really quickly. Basically, you write the list and it's out of date the next day.
But the big ticket item in what the government does immediately and in the longer term is how it shifts the migration system back to one centred on permanent rather than temporary migration. Many of the skilled workers we need who do come here, like nurses and doctors, find themselves in a permanently temporary world where they have to roll over their visas every 2 years, yet have no pathway to permanent residence.
One of the reasons our migration history has been so powerful, a force for good in our country, is because we have rooted that system in citizenship and permanency. Now, the way that our migration system has been managed of late hasn't focused on that. It's focused far too much on temporary workers and added to this increasing pool of people in our country who are trapped in a sort of limbo. They're permanently temporary.
The spectre of missing out on workers, crucial to our economy, highlights the risks we face if the system does not change.
We are in intense competition for people like nurses and teachers, etc., and that competition will intensify. And we need to think about that. We are not going to fill our shortages of nurses and teachers, shortages that will get worse even with even if the labour market weakens. So we have to be in competition for those people and understand that competition.